Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Raising the New Earth podcast. I'm your host, Noa Dori, and today I'm honored to have Dr. Rachel Dew on the podcast, a double board certified doctor of natural and integrative medicine and other healing modalities, founder of the incredible IWA, Integrative Wellness Academy, an online holistic school for practitioners, a published author, and the creator of the ECM emotional clearing method. In today's conversation, we'll explore how to move beyond wellness fatigue, harness our inner wisdom, and cultivate a life and a world rooted in wholeness, balance, and soulful growth. Let's dive in. Hi, Dr. Rachel. How are you?
Hi, I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for having me on. I've been very much looking forward to our conversation.
I'm so excited to have you. I don't know if you know that, but you are a true inspiration for me. I adore you, adore you.
Oh,
So
thank you.
tell us a little bit about your background. I mean, did you grow up saying I'm going to be a doctor one day, or what did you grow up wanting to be, and how did you end up doing what you do today?
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, you're going for the deep questions right out of the gate. Okay. No. Did I want to be a doctor growing up? No, not at all. Um, I was raised in a really interesting environment. My father is a scientist, and my mother was more of a hippie, and she's a social worker, right? A social worker, and she was an artist. So
Hmm.
I grew up around things in the 70s. I'm dating myself here a little bit. In the 70s, things like transcendental meditation, I was raised more with natural and nutritional uh, healing. And, that was just something that, again, I was more raised with. But then I really got passionate about the physical body and the mastery that we can really have over what we can do with this incredible vessel, right? And so I was actually a semi-competitive athlete for a while, and I have always written, and so I started writing books on, fitness and body health and things of that nature, and then went out and got, certified in numerous different of the body modalities. Everything from therapeutic and functional fitness to um, nutrition for fitness to yoga to aquatic therapeutic and somatic work. And for me, that was like the beginning of the exploration is when we look on the physical body, because I always say that the physical body is really like where the results show up the loudest and the fastest that get our attention. And the more that we begin to explore that, I think that as human beings, when we explore that with intentionality and with open mindedness and awareness, and really the curiosity to like feel into the roots of things that we're identifying, that we start to realize and recognize that it's not just the physical system, right? But sometimes the roots of that are mental, emotional, or even spiritual. And we really have to look at ourselves from a holistic framework, and not just ourselves, but the life around us. So, all of the different major areas of life also contribute to our physical health or our mental health or our emotional health or our spiritual health, right? So we really have to take into account all aspects of self, all of the major areas of life. And that's what really fueled my educational journey, was that curiosity and that exploration. Me, myself, doing a lot of deeper somatic healing, working through some past traumas that I had had, then going out and getting, additional training. And I think many of us who are in the healing fields, who may have found our way into the healing fields, I should say, um, have gone through our own healing journey and have found really powerful tools, and then became impassioned to want to share those tools with other people so that they could also expand their healing journey and their outcomes and be able to live, their best life possible. So, that sent me back to school, got my doctorate, and then I probably do an additional certification every year just because there's no, I remember, I know you were talking about getting ready to get your doctorate, and I'm wondering if you feel this same way. So I'm going to shoot a question back to you. But when I got my doctorate, I remember, holding that diploma and realizing, okay, I'm a doctor now, and recognizing the magnitude of the limitation of my knowledge and thinking, oh my gosh, there's just so much more. There will always be so much more. Do you ever find that?
Yes, 100%, right? We're trained in so many different modalities, and yet I'm still sitting down. It's like, okay, which modality am I choosing? How will my clinic look like? And I don't know enough. But I would say that being with the mindset of a student, a lifetime student, I think that's what makes us so unique, because we don't think we have all the answers. We can only share what we learned. We can only share what has worked for us. And then we're still growing with the feedback of our clients, with new things that we come across, new things that our patients and clients come across. So I think there's a forever seek of growth in us that will never be fulfilled. And that's a beautiful thing.
Yes. And I think that's something that I would love to invite, patients and clients and anybody listening to this to adopt as well, because just when we think and believe that something is true, it's almost not always true forever and ever, right? Something may be really beneficial for our mental health right now, or our emotional health, or our career, or our family. But we continue to practice that forever and ever like it's a fact, but things changed. We have different seasons of life, and we need to constantly be willing to transform our lives and seek out new information so that we can stay empowered as human beings and really cultivate and curate every aspect of our life to be joyful and balanced and well.
Absolutely. And I think, like, in our profession, there's a lot of mentioning of evidence-based. I always, hear it in both my degrees, doctorate and dietitian degrees, like evidence-based. Yes, everything is evidence-based, but sometimes the target is a moving target. The evidence, just because the evidence is not there yet, it doesn't mean there's no effect. So us wanting to expand, and maybe, Western medicine catching up to integrative, more holistic medicine as a complementary model that can be expanded into something that's more than a symptomatic approach. That's, for me, would be a dream come true if I get to see it in my lifetime. Like, how do we incorporate all the tools that both you and I have learned into the Westernized medicine so that patients can be treated more than their symptoms? But like you said, it's mental, it's physical, it's emotional.
Well, I love that you bring that up, because I mean, you and I could really have hours and hours and hours of discussion about
True.
allopathic medicine or like the traditional Western medicine. I'm going to avoid that because I don't know how productive it would be or helpful to our listeners. But what I will say is that I love to say it takes a village, and each person has to be their own case manager, their own village leader, right? And everyone is, myself, you, any type of practitioner of any kind has a certain training, and it's within a certain lens, and it's the framework that they look at everything through. But a patient or a human being sees through a completely different lens than any practitioner will ever be able to look at their own body and their own situation, because you as a human are experiencing your body. And oftentimes you can go see a practitioner and explain what you're experiencing, and then they are looking through a very narrow lens of their experience to try to come up with a definition, a diagnosis, a solution, a protocol, a prescription, a supplement, whatever it is, right? And that may or may not actually be true for you, because not every modality solves every issue. And I always say you need to look at every single expert, every single practitioner as a piece of feedback that you need to bring back to yourself. Okay, you need to do your own research. You have to be empowered. You can't just, take two, call me in the morning. That the days of that kind of medical treatment are long gone, because most everyone knows that that doesn't work for them. And so that does mean you gotta not just pass off the power to someone else. With patients, when I was in full-time practice, I would say, listen, here's my feedback, but take it only as feedback and go marinate on this. See what feels true for you. Also, get other perspectives. Someone is going to look at depression, for example, if they're trained in mental health, from a very different lens than a psychiatrist, very different lens from, a functional medicine brain health doctor or coach, nutritionist, right? So all of these different practitioners can give a gem of wisdom. But at the end of the day, we have to make the choices that are what feel aligned for our body and our well-being. And sometimes that does take some practice, play, and adjust, because that clinical data, that scientific research and science backed, first and foremost, half the time you're reading something you think is, valid and fact, but it's only looking at a small population under a very limited circumstance that may not have anything to do with your circumstance. Number two, a lot of times that research is funded by pharmaceutical companies or other vested interest groups that skew things, because we all look at things with bias. And if I'm going to hunt down, a coyote in my backyard, I might completely miss all the other animals in my backyard because I'm only looking for coyotes, right? So there's no such thing as fully unbiased, right? Really. But when there's vested interest as far as a product someone can sell on the tail end of that study or a pharmaceutical, you really have to take it with a grain of salt, a pretty big grain of salt, and take that into consideration in your factor weighing the value of that information. The other thing is that, experiential data, that patient reported data is so huge. It's so huge. And a lot of medical doctors are trained to ignore that because it's not valid. It's not science backed. It's not evidence based. But the truth of the matter is, not everybody, again, in that study had the same situation. So if you have, 100 people reporting that they have perimenopause symptoms that are being relieved by, using essential oils. I'm just throwing that out there. I'm not giving any advice here. But for example, if you're having 100 patients saying that there's a benefit in this, is there harm in trying that and exploring it? For some there are, if you have like very significant, for example, migraines that happen frequently for you, essential oils may be very triggering. So maybe that's not for you, right? But again, this is where we have to, as human beings, we have to take accountability for our own health. We have to do our own research. Then we have to practice in safe ways, things that feel aligned for us. And we have to practice, play, and adjust. Because again, something that works now may not work for another condition or another situation or another season of your life. So it's a lifelong journey, right? I always say that wellness and well-being, that's not like a target we hit and then we're like, yes, I'm there. I've achieved it, right? I've climbed the peak. I'm going to hang out here at the top and, live my best life. No, that is ever shifting, right? Being well in the physical body, in medicine, we call a state of homeostasis, right? And that's like, if you're looking at a scale and this way is not well and this way is well, homeostasis is here. And the body is designed to heal itself and to return to a state of homeostasis when we give it the right environment to do so, right? And so, that's why we need to learn about where we're at, day to day. sort of like people have mindfulness practices. Well, part of being mindful as a human being is starting to become more embodied, check in with yourself. Where am I at today? I wake up in the morning and I'm like, okay, I don't have a lot of energy today. How can I modify to meet that need, right? How can I nurture myself while still doing the things I need to do in life that I have responsibilities for? So you're never going to hit that wellness target. You're going to get close to it, but on a day-to-day basis, you've got to practice, play, and adjust to really remain in that place, that balance, or that homeostasis.
100%. And I think Dr. Zach Bush calls it the golden ratio of health to repair. And he described it as a scale. So whenever we tilt that scale towards one side, it's time to give your body, your mind, your mental state a little more attention. So I 100% agree with you. You mentioned somatic work, and in your most recent book, Somatic Nutrition, you go into the environment and how you eat your food. Can you explain to us what is somatic nutrition? I mostly know about somatic breath, but not when it's paired with nutrition. So tell us more about it.
Sure. So somatic nutrition is different than, you may have heard of something like mindfulness nutrition or mindfully eating, or you may have heard of another movement called intuitive eating, where you totally listen to whatever cravings come up in the body and then you just feed yourself that. Somatic nutrition goes far beyond that because, and I'll take it from an example of, or a starting point of, intuitive nutrition, since I just gave it like that little definition. So in intuitive nutrition, we're having these somatic feedback coming up in the body, right? Usually in the form of cravings. And people think, okay, so I'm going to follow my body's intuitive request. I'm just going to eat that cookie. And then, I'm going to eat 25 cookies or whatever they feel that craving is for. But you are not actually giving the body what it needs. And the reason is because those cravings or those feedbacks firing off, they are like a 2-year-old child, right? I know you have kids, so I'm sure that you have witnessed and experienced 2-year-olds having tantrums, right? Especially around, like, they don't want to go to bed, but they're so exhausted that they're just having complete meltdowns, right? So the meltdown is the feedback, but what the body is really asking for in that moment with that toddler is sleep. But the toddler is interpreting it as being really upset. Maybe they want to stay up and watch more TV, or they want to, like, do something else, right? 5 more stories or whatever it is that they're thinking is going to meet that upset and calm it down, right? So with somatic nutrition, we learn how to become more embodied, feel connected to those cues, that feedback that comes up, be able to sit with it, and we get a re-education in nutrition so that we can understand what the need is behind that. And then we can make a nutritional choice that really, truly meets that need in a balanced way. But somatic nutrition goes way beyond that. It also goes into, what kind of relationship do you have with food? A lot of people were raised in, different cultures that may have celebrated food, where food was used as a reward or a punishment, or, it was all about family, for example. Meal times may have been emotionally joyful or difficult, right? Those types of things shape our relationship to food. And then you have things like toxic wellness culture and, popular culture coming in, shaping what we're supposed to look like, what we're supposed to eat, what's good food, what's bad food, shaming and guilt and stress and all of that funky stuff that comes in and gets attached to our relationships with food. And then you also have, different needs that your specific body has to remain balanced, right? We don't all need the same amount of carbohydrates, the same amount of protein, all of that. Then somatic nutrition goes even beyond that and says, like, hey, so when we study areas of the world where there's optimal longevity and much more minimal significant disease like diabetes, heart disease, Alzheimer's and dementia, obesity, when we look at what they eat, a lot of times in Western culture, what do we want to do? Here, especially like in North America, we want to distill it down to a very strict 10-step diet. We don't do this and we do this. My gosh, A, that's toxic. B, that's stressful and has this like negativity attached to it. Really, if you go into these pockets of the world where they have, high levels of longevity, living past 100 with very low prevalence of disease, I've studied, and for this book that I wrote, I went to Nicoya, Costa Rica. I went to Icaria, Greece a few times, a number of other places throughout Europe, and studied all of this. But again, here in the West, we want to put that into a diet plan, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some kind of box and control and checklist. One of the key takeaways for me that I also incorporated in somatic nutrition that you won't see in most of the other information around longevity and longevity nutrition and the blue zones and things like that is really the practice of eating. The practice of eating. So it's, how do we eat? Are we connected with our body? Do we know when we're full? Right? Do we know how much food we need? Right? What are we doing? Are we eating in a stressful environment? Are we eating in a calm environment? Are we attuned enough to ourselves to notice how different foods at different times of day, make us feel emotionally, physically, energetically, right? So it's to take all of that and just kind of boil it down. Somatic nutrition really helps you become empowered to radically shift your relationship with your body, your own body, and how you feed it.
Yeah, and I love it coming from the Middle Eastern culture. There's always, that breaking bread is always evident. And so when I see a patient that is in need for cardiac diet and the Mediterranean diet comes to play, there's always um, a little comment on my behalf, asking the patient maybe to look into not just the actual diet of what we grew up on, but actually who you're eating it with and the state you're eating it, and so on and so forth. So what you're saying really resonates with me because it's since coming to America, I find this is like a grab and go. I don't necessarily want this grab and go all the time. I want to sit down for a meal. I don't want to rush through the door with my coffee and off I go to the next thing. I don't want to see a lot of drive through Starbucks. I actually want to sit down and have a conversation with my friend. So this part I really miss. And I'm so happy that you got the chance to see it up close and write more about it because it's very much needed.
So you just mentioned something really powerful. And this is what I'm exploring for my next book, actually. That grab and go kind of goes along with this. The culture here in the West, and really in a lot of largely populated cities in different places around the world, but especially in North America, is so incredibly focused on go, 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 work, work, work. And the life that we're living is so disaligned from how humans are designed to live and to operate. We're not designed to be in front of computer screens, all of the time. When I was in Icaria, Greece, I didn't see on that island, I didn't see a single person wearing glasses because they're not staring at screens all day. They don't watch a lot of TV. They're not on their computers a lot. They're not constantly on social media, at least, say 30-year-old and over. Some of the younger generations are starting to pick up some of our bad habits, unfortunately. But we're also not only living disaligned in that way by how we're working, how we're not moving our bodies very much, but we're also super disaligned with, again, how the humans were designed to operate, because we as a culture tend to seek out products, services, even social activities that are as easy and comfortable as possible, right? They don't take a lot of independent thinking, critical thinking skills. They don't take self-discipline. They don't take resistance. And hey, you can't have a diamond without refinement through resistance, right? And the same is true for us. We are, as human beings, we are moving away from being resilient. We are moving away from a state of homeostasis in our bodies. We are, unable to function in environments that were designed for truly the way that we're meant to. I was actually thinking about this. I think I posted something on social media about this a few weeks back, but I was in my backyard doing some yard work in the morning, because I always spend at least 20 minutes in the morning as the sun is coming up outside to really, help my circadian sleep rhythm, my brain, my energy levels, soak up some vitamin D. Anyway, so I was out working in the yard and doing some gardening. And I thought, gosh, it's so funny how so many people, and I live in Los Angeles, so many people here in LA pay someone to do their gardening for them, but then drive and go to the gym to work out, right? So they have a gym membership that they're paying for, but they're paying someone else to do the stuff they don't want to do, but it's actually so good for the body. For functional movement, meaning how's my body, the structure of my body, going to carry me through life? Functional fitness addresses that. And, things like gardening, yard work, house cleaning, those menial tasks are actually so incredibly good for us. In Icaria, you'll see women and men in their 90s and even into their early hundreds out doing yard work every single day, tinkering in the garden and things like that. I was watching this funny rom-com movie recently, and there was a line in it that I just was like, oh yeah, that makes so much sense. So this guy was like trying to swim, and he was like ripped and built and like super attractive, and he like could not swim, and the girl was like, what, you're like in such great shape? And he's like, oh, and she's like, oh, you're hot girl fit. Right? And what that translates to, because it could be hot guy fit, hot girl fit, whatever. But what that translates to is the muscles and the structure is not functional. It was for aesthetics only, right? So it's not actually built to function in the world. And truthfully, we're building lives that aren't meant to function in this world.
You hit a few points that I wanted to take a moment. So you're talking about Icaria and other, including Loma Linda. So we have all those blue zones around us. And for those of us that want to dive into a movie that was done recently, I think it's called Live to 100.
Yes,
it's on Netflix, right?
Yeah, my friends Elaine and George are in the Icaria episode. Yeah, great watch.
It's a great watch for those of you that want to just, look at all these areas without needing to travel to them. But you're absolutely right that functional fitness and the reason why we're at the gym or why we're doing things, for me, at least I can say the incentive is to keep up with the energy of my children. The incentive is to be able to spend time outside, to go hiking in nature, to do the yard work if I choose. And I think we lost track of that because, again, this culture is about appearance. And working in a healthcare facility for a while, I've seen a lot of people that may look on the outside, hot or desirable, but really had severe eating disorders, severe depression. And so I always tell my, especially female clients, I would say, I do see it with some male clients, but especially female clients, to not to seek that model of body that is sin, but to seek that health, because health will carry you through life. But thinness may not. What happens if you fall down and break a hip? You need to have a little buffer, especially as we grow older, to carry you through life, to not have osteoporosis, to not break a hip bone. So what you're saying is absolutely true. You need to have functional movement in order to carry you through life, and not so much as how do I look like? And yes, our bodies in our 40s and 50s are not going to be the bodies of our 20s. But what did I know when I was in my 20s? Not a lot. So I'll trade wisdom for a little buffer, as I like to call it. In your blog, you described wellness fatigue. So you described it almost like the burnout of chasing perfect health. So I want to get a little bit into it. How can the listeners reclaim their wellness in a way that feels nourishing rather than exhausting?
Sure. And I think this is a fine line, because it's easy for us to give ourselves permission to check out and then just not do the work. I'm not saying that.
Right.
Being a healthy, well person, living an extraordinary life doesn't happen by accident, or everyone would be doing it. So it does take intentionality. It does take some, investment of time, energy, and also resources. However, there's, again, like that homeostasis, there's a balance. And it's finding your right balance of what works for you, and giving yourself, I think, first and foremost, permission to honor that balance, right? I remember there's a certain form of yoga, a lineage of a specific practice of yoga that I cannot stand. And I love yoga. I'm like a big yogi. But there's this one that I just really don't vibe with. I don't connect with it. I don't feel good in my body when I do it. And every few years, I'll circle back and go take one of those classes, because I want to find out, is that still true? Mm-hmm. Right? So it's a matter of, again, giving ourselves permission to explore and to practice. But when you're seeing these beautiful model looking people, male, female, any gender, you're just seeing the wrapping on the outside. Okay. And just like you were saying, you don't know the health of the inside, or the emotional well-being, right? Or how balanced their life is, how joyful they are, how purposeful their life is. So we're not seeing that. So anytime you see, that pretty candy coating, just know that that's just one piece of information. Mm-hmm. And just because they look a certain way, what they're saying isn't necessarily valid for your body or true for you. Number one. Number two, it may not be helpful. It may not be balanced. You, as for example, a mother of small children, what is balanced for you in your fitness, in your nutrition, in your self-care, in your meditation practice, in your spiritual practice, whatever, is going to look completely different than someone, say, in their 20s that, is single, right? It's not same, right? We've got to understand to stop comparing ourselves to anyone, really. And also stop comparing apples to oranges. But also that comparison is never helpful. Mm-hmm. So what you're seeing out there in popular culture, here's the new fitness fad. Here's the new $200 yoga pants. Here's the new 25,000 supplements that you got to take if you want to, whatever, you want to be healthy, you want to be well, you want your brain to function. All of this is commercialization, mm-hmm. right? So just like looking at scientific research through the lens of recognizing that it's often biased, so is that information. And again, as I said before, the body is designed to return to homeostasis. The body is designed to heal itself mm-hmm. when we give ourselves the right environment. So what is the right environment? I'm not saying supplements are not helpful, especially things like a multivitamin, probiotics, and, a good amount of healthy fats, things like omegas. for most people because we have to supplement what has been depleted out of our soil and out of our food systems. But all of these 5,000, supplements to treat this and to do this and to do that, are they effective? Look, I have a doctorate in natural medicine. They're great, but they're just like a pill. They're just like a medication. It's an outside solution. It's not going to the core, to the root issue. Why is the system out of balance? How can I address this first through lifestyle medicine? And that's going to always be my first invitation to everyone, is first take a look at your own life and what can you begin gently and lovingly moving towards that you want to have, do, or create more of through just lifestyle modifications, again, that are aligned in ways that with your personal values, with your responsibilities, with what you have to invest energy wise, and begin just allowing yourself to move towards things instead of like, okay, I've got to conquer this. I've got to, I'm going to cut all this out. I'm going to never that. Even just like thinking about that, right? You start getting stressed. So my invitation, to kind of continue on that is, as your listeners or viewers are seeing an Instagram or a TikTok reel or reading some article about some new, great nutrition plan or fad or, workout gear or whatever it is, take a moment to see how that feels in your body. Does that feel calm, peaceful, and joyful? Or does that feel like, okay, that's really stressful. Oh my gosh, fear-based. All right, I better do this, but now I'm stressed because I have 5,000 things to do on my daily wellness list, and I still have to work, and I still have to be a mom, and I still have to be a wife, right? Ugh, yuck. So,
Totally.
yeah. Listen, we survived in the wild, attuned with nature, without all this stuff. And in blue zones, where people are living to over 100, again, very active lives, very little disease. They're not doing 5,000 things. All they do is lifestyle medicine. It's, getting good sleep, nurturing yourself and your heart, having good community, living a life that feels filled with purpose, not intaking or being exposed to chemicals through foods and through your environment, moving your body, finding joy. Yeah. So if you're a person that hates working out or exercise, find a form that feels like joy. Human beings are designed to be walking around in nature. Go hike, go in the woods, take a little walk and then sit down and just smell the flowers, right? Hug a tree, whatever, or dance or garden or paint or clean your house, whatever might bring you joy. That is a form of functional movement.
These are beautiful reminders. And now I think I understand your desire to open that Integrative Wellness Academy, IWA. You have trained, over 10,000?
15,000. Mm-hmm.
15,000 coaches. Tell us a little bit about it. How did it come about? Who can join? And what core shift have you seen happening to those people who train after they graduate, when they're done with the program?
Oh, good question. Well, so Integrative Wellness Academy was really founded on the back of questions and demands from within that other practitioners were giving me. So, after I wrote my first book, I was doing a lot of like conference tours, being, guest keynote speaker. And I would be speaking on this like integrative approach and a holistic approach. And other practitioners would come up to me, therapists, doctors, personal trainers, yoga teachers, every kind of practitioner, school teachers, and say, oh my gosh, like people need to know this. How can I learn how to do this and add this to my practice? Mm-hmm. And so that's when I ended up, in response, I created a curriculum. I founded Integrative Wellness Academy. We now have, 13 instructors and have, online curriculum. We have students literally stationed anywhere in the world you could possibly imagine, and also graduates. But we offer different focused modalities all with an underlying of foundation of coaching from this integrative perspective, this more holistic coaching. But then we have, life coaching from this holistic and integrative perspective. We have somatic practitioners, who are trained on top of that coaching to help their clients to get back to homeostasis, to release stuck trauma, negative emotions, the impacts of limiting beliefs on the fascia and the body habits and patterns, right? That can come out in our thought life, in our actions, right? All of those things. And a number of other different modalities, including emotional clearing method practitioner, which is a specific technique and modality that I created after about 20 years of clinical research. But I would say that first and foremost, you don't have to want to be a practitioner to become certified in one of these modalities that we offer, because a lot of people will spend, thousands of dollars and years going to see a coach or to a therapist or to a somatic practitioner and not really become fully self-empowered to heal themselves. And so gaining that knowledge, and then you can, practice it on yourself and with your family and really help your family, I think is the least expensive path forward. So again, if somebody doesn't have to want to actually start a business or, be in business as a practitioner to really benefit from it. But our graduates are really the platinum quality of excellence and reputation and impact out in the market globally, because again, they have that really integrative, holistic coaching, plus then the specialized modality training on top of it.
You do so much. You are an entrepreneur and you're a clinician. How do you maintain the integrity, the intention, and the deep alignment that we need as practitioners while keep building your vision?
That's great. So for me, balance is key. And, I've talked about there's different seasons of life, and balance is going to look different. So it's my highest joy to write books. I've written 9 books so far. I have probably 5 more, 2 that I'm actively working on, and 3 more after that I know are up, next that I want to write. I love to sit down for months and just get it done. I'm not in a season of life where that works for me right now. I'm a caregiver of an elderly father who has Alzheimer's, and I am needing to honor the season of life that I'm in and the responsibilities of that season of life, and to say, okay, where I used to do something in this amount of time, I'm going to, quadruple that amount of time. And I'm also going to decrease my workload in any way that I can and increase my self-care so that I can have the ability to wake up and then move a little here, a little there to hit that balance that I need for each day, right? So things shift and things change, and it's important to honor that, really giving yourself permission. A lot of people look for outside validation or permission from someone else, but we really need to give ourselves permission to honor what we need. And I want to give that a little caveat here, okay? Because I used to own a wellness center with 23 different types of practitioners. And there were a handful of them that were super woo-woo, and I loved them, but they were oh, I'm not going to be in today because my intuition and my, what was aligned for me today was to stop and hug trees all day long. So I won't be in. Okay, so this kind of goes along with a lot of the younger generations and the lack of that, not accountability, that's not really the right word, resiliency and capacity, right? So this disaligned lifestyle from how we're meant to live is creating an inability for us to show up for hard things. and showing up for hard things is an important part of being a human being. So
Mm-hmm.
when I say like give yourself permission, honor where you're at, I am not giving a free pass or even saying it's good to give a free pass to not show up for life. We still have to show up for life. But the question is, okay, so today I have this stuff that is my responsibility to show up for. That's very showing up for it is aligned with my personal values. I'm going to show up as the best version of myself. And also, how do I then, alongside of that, care for myself? How do I give myself permission to also show up for myself in ways that I need today? So it's a delicate balance, right? So it's not about, giving ourselves permission to eat all the cookies in the world, but, maybe once on Friday, or like eat the cake at the birthday party. It's all about balance. Everything is.
So you're talking about, what I'm hearing from you is that you're talking about healthy boundaries and strong communication, first with yourself and maybe also with ones that are the people that are surrounding you.
Yeah, I wrote a blog once. I think it's called The Power of Yes and No. It's on my website. But it really was talking about that of, that we need to set healthy boundaries with ourselves. Boundaries, a lot of people hear that word and they think it's about setting a boundary on someone else. You can't do this. That's control. That's not a boundary. Boundaries are set with love. They're, hey, so you're losing your temper at me. I understand that you're angry and upset right now. And if you continue to yell, I'm going to need to leave. And then if they continue to yell, I leave. Right. So it's a matter of boundaries are things that we set out of love. The majority of boundaries we set should be with ourselves. Right. And it's up to us to honor those in loving ways.
Do you feel that from your experience, women have a more difficult time with setting up boundaries than men, or you don't see that differentiation at all?
Look, I think these days, gender roles have more to do with not the gender, but the environment you're raised in, like what you learned in the social communities that you're in. So I don't want to say, oh yeah, women this and men this, because I just don't think that applies anymore. I don't know that it ever really did, but yes, back in, the 50s when my mother was growing up, there were very specific expectations on different genders, right? Same thing with my father, that created certain behavior patterns and adaptations. And so women through the history have had an adaptation to certain social expectations that created a behavior and pattern of not honoring our own needs and not showing up for ourselves last, putting everyone else's priorities above ours. And in our generation, you and I, we're still shaking that off, right? We're still shaking that off. Younger generations still shaking that off, because those are deep wounds that are intergenerational. Those patternings, they're deeply rooted in the unconscious mind. So I think, men have different, issues that are generational patterns based on societal norms than maybe women do. And then, of course, then we just get out of those boxes and we have like, okay, where are we at today? And what am I experiencing? And what is it that I personally have to work through, right? So because someone can be any gender and have a really hard time setting boundaries and be conflict averse. And that's really often more aligned with your upbringing and how safe you were with your caregivers. And that's, for anybody that's really interested in looking into that and exploring that more, you can look up what the imago is. And these are attachment styles that we develop based on our relationships with our caregivers. And that tends to inform us if it's safe to speak our truth. Is it safe to show up for myself? Did other people show up for me? Was I cared for and nurtured and protected? Or am I anxiously attached, right? So again, these are all things that we just, learn about ourselves as we grow and just continue to explore. But we should explore that in balanced ways.
Yeah, I agree. As someone that is deeply committed to raising the consciousness through healing, with your school, with your clinic, what legacy do you hope to leave, both in your individual lives and the broader systems of healthcare and wellness?
Hmm. Oh my goodness. Well, I think, you know, I think that everything that I do, even though I have all of these different kind of projects or business outlets and things of that nature, everything that I do, even my hobbies, are really about removing the roadblocks to becoming your best self, right? And to getting resourced so that we have the ability, each and every one of us, to live our best lives.
Mm-hmm. Amen to that. I like that. Before we wrap up, what is your one, if you can narrow it down to one piece of wisdom or practical guidance that you would like to have our listeners, you'd like to share with our listeners today? Something that they can perhaps carry into their daily routine to keep nurturing their resilience and conscious living.
Oh my goodness, narrowing it down to like one thing. I think it could come down to values,
Mm.
actually. So all of the thoughts, words, and actions that we take towards self and others are based on our values. And sometimes our values are conflicting because we've adopted values from our culture, from our community, from our environment, from our family, that may be in conflict with our individual true highest values, right? So, a great example of that is if somebody has the highest value of becoming as successful in their career as possible, but they discover that value, a value they adopted from expectations from their parents, but that value is in direct conflict with their personal highest value, which is like being a good parent and spending time with their child, right? And that's in conflict. They need to find a way to realign, rewrite your values. I love to elicit my values every 6 months and then just kind of like take an honest look at them and an honest look at my life and notice where in my health and wellness am I out of alignment? Where in, family and relationships, career and finance, self-development and spirituality, all of those things. What's disaligned? Because when we build everything on top of a strong foundation, that house stands, right? So, for example, if I'm making a choice on a certain supplement to take, or a certain food to eat or not eat, or whatever, right? If those choices are aligned with my values, yeah, that's a big yes to move gently in that direction and explore more. That doesn't mean, yeah, do it for sure, right? Because I'll tell you, travel is highly aligned with my values. And right now is a season of life where I really can't travel away from here more than 2 weeks at a time. And I like to do that, very rarely. So, but my highest value would say, yes, I'm going to grab my passport. We're off. Right. But so we have to, again, all things in balance. So understanding your core values, trying to align your life and your choices with those values, I think is a great foundational place to start building your house.
I love that. And you said something really important. You said, like, which values are you attached to because this is how you grew up, which values are truly yours, and peeling through those layers of noise, internal noise that is sitting within us. I think it's the first and most important step to really rediscovering who you are in this season of life.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Right. So, yep. All right. Dr. Rachel, you're the best.
Thank you. I feel the same way about you.
You're incredible. And we should get together for another hike very soon, please. Okay. We appreciate you. Thank you so much for being on our podcast.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me. Take good and gentle care. Bye-bye.
Will do. Bye.